all I was going to do is all I was going to do is, say this is Talking Peace with the Interfaith Peace Network, and we have Agnes Williams of Seneca of Indigenous Women's Initiative and the Interfaith Peace Network, who is going to do a Gnonyoh. And then you'll do the Gnonyoh, and then if you, I don't know where the thing is that you're talking about, or I mean,
I sent it to you. I emailed it to you.
yeah, but you emailed me a lot of things, so I'm not sure which one it was in. And I tried to watch that thing from the West Coast, but I tried for honestly more than an hour, where it kept stalling, more than an hour, and it kept stopping. And meanwhile, I'm trying to do other things at the same time. So I tried to get it going again. I shut down the computer. It just wasn't working. I don't know how much it was the video, or how much of it was my settings or my computer or what. But
well, it was mostly just background on the UN stuff, so you knew like the bones of it, the Indigenous Peoples case.
Well, I mean, if you can just tell it yourself, I think it will be, we can refer people to, any website or document. But I think, when people just hear, I'm looking.
Well, I keep hoping that you're going to learn it. So, because if something happens.
Oh, this part. Okay, is this the part? No, not that. That Indigenous people are at the beginning and end of the nuclear chain.
Oh, that's the West Valley thing.
Right, so not that. Then there's Victor Toledo. Then there's... That wasn't it. That was...
I sent you the bio link. Just read it so I don't have to...
Well, I'll read it, but I just have to find it. Nuclear Free Future Series Introduction?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just, I don't like blowing my own horn. I'll let you do it.
You want me to read all of that before you do the Gnonyoh?
Not about the series, not the description, but the bio part.
The bio part is long.
Oh.
I mean, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, and they are not small paragraphs.
I thought it was
6,
like 3. I think you're looking at the description too. I thought it was only 3.
Well, it's a lot of it's a half a dozen paragraphs, and
no, I think you're looking at something else.
Well, I'm just looking at.
So it's not that long.
2021-824 Nuclear Free Future Series Introduction. Agnes F. Williams is a Wolf Clan enrolled Seneca, Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, who was born and grew up downstream. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want that before the Gnonyoh?
No, after.
Okay.
Okay, Vicki, how does the screen look? Do we have it set up okay?
Looks great. Perfect. Excellent.
I can't see you. I don't know why. Can you see me?
I can see you. You should be able to see me. Can you set it up so she can see me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have that.
Yeah, that's good. I like the way you have it set up now. I'll just make
All
sure.
I can see is Western New York Peace Center.
Yeah, he'll change it. He'll change it so that you can see me. Because I think that's important. I know when I had to talk with Don Lemon, I forgot to tell them to set it up so I could see him, and it made it very hard for me. It really was like, walking blindfolded or something. It was very difficult. You want to, that's part of communicating.
How about now? Can you see her now?
Nope.
No, okay. All right, so that doesn't have any effect.
Huh. Now I lost that. I don't know.
That is something I'm going to have to resolve rather than do it now. I'll have to do it after the show and find out why you can't see her.
Darn.
Speaker, gallery, full screen.
Oh, you have to, oh, put it on gallery. See if that makes a difference.
I still got the Western Europe Peace Center logo.
Okay, let me see if I can. Let's see here. Maybe it's this thing. Did that do anything?
It's black now.
Aha, we're making
There you
progress.
are. I see you.
All right, okay, so
Oh,
now,
good. Okay.
Agnes,
Yeah.
you just helped me figure out how Zoom works now. Thank you. Okay, how's that look, Vicki?
Great.
On the screen.
Sure.
Does that look good?
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
Facebook says they're ready if we're ready.
Okay. Okay, so we're ready.
You got the timer set to 59:59?
Yeah.
Okay, step one, flip the switch. Is, oh,
Oh,
you know how to fix
buzzing.
that. Go ahead and fix that under the table. You fixed it?
Yeah.
Excellent. You're an engineer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now put the clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you are on the air.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Interfaith Peace Network. We're starting out today, very excited to start out with a Gnonyoh from Agnes Williams, Seneca of the Interfaith Peace Network, and of course, especially the Indigenous Women's Initiative and the Seneca Nation. So, anyway, so thank you, Agnes.
Usually, this is done by the males in our culture. Since we don't have a male here to do the opening, then I'm going to do my short opening. The Gnonyoh really is a speech that's given whenever the people gather, when people come together. It's what they call the words before all else. And it is our belief, that we have to first acknowledge everything in the creation. And then secondly, we give thanks for everything in the creation. And then thirdly, is the prayer part, which is always the same. We ask that everything continue as originally instructed so that life will continue within this creation. So our prayer doesn't change. It's and so as it starts, we start with ourselves and the people and everybody here. And I'd like to give a greetings and thanksgiving for Vicki for doing the show, and for Richard for putting it together for us, and all our listeners and our viewers out there on Facebook and the website. I guess this will go up on the website. Anybody who's joining us and watching us today.
Or WNY, too.
And WNY at Buffalo State College, we have extended greetings and thanksgiving and acknowledgement, it always takes a village to put everybody together to do these things. It's not just Vicki and I or Richard doing it. We have to always depend on one another. So we always like to acknowledge and give a greetings and thanksgiving for our lives, for all the people. I always like to, this is also done on an individual basis in the morning and in the evening. And since we're in the evening time now, it's kind of, thinking about my day and what things I'm grateful for. And so I like to extend the greetings and thanksgiving. I just came off a call from the Sierra Club that was with Brian Higgins, and we were talking about the rescue monies and the budgets that we're going through and, what's needed in Western New York. And we talked about the West Valley. Diane was there and was able to, talk about, how we're really concerned about more money being put into nuclear development, because we can't contain the waste that we do have. Now we're still struggling to contain it, especially at West Valley. And all the Diana Strabo, who's been very active in pipeline work, and all the people in the Sierra Club who come together to protect our environment. So just want to extend a greetings and Thanksgiving for all of those people that are still remembering our Mother, the Earth. And a greetings and Thanksgiving for my family, especially my daughters, their husbands, all my grandchildren, and all the faces coming to us. You know, we always think 7 generations ahead, so we're always thinking about all those children that are still coming to us in our bloodline. And extended greetings and Thanksgiving for the nation, the Seneca Nation of Indians, who is playing a particularly stronger role in the climate change movement now. We have a climate change task force, and all the people that have done a survey and got more information and meet regularly to put together these adaptation plans and vulnerability studies, you know, and what do we all have to do to get ready for this imminent and dangerous change that is coming towards us, as we all felt it today, you know, that hot weather. And it's going to be hotter, and the rains, you know, when it rains, it pours, and the flooding, and all of these extremes that we're experiencing. So extended greetings and Thanksgiving to all of the people that are working on the climate change. And greetings and Thanksgiving for the Seneca Nation, you know, for my nation. And a special greetings and Thanksgiving for all of the Indian people and the Native Indigenous people around the world as they continue to struggle to exist and to continue on for their future generations. So we think about them at this time, all the people, and extended greetings and Thanksgiving to everyone, and ask that they continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. And then the next thing we go to is we kind of do a circle, you know, we just look about us and think about our day, you know, especially at this time of day, you know, the things that we're like to extend the greetings for. In particular, for me, extend the greetings and Thanksgiving for our Mother, the Earth, because she continues to support our feet. She continues to provide everything we need, the water we drink, the food we eat, the air we breathe. You know, she's always there nurturing and taking care of all of the people and all of us. So we like to acknowledge our Mother, the Earth, and ask that she continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. And then as we look about us, we see the plants, and especially those plants that provide food for us, and those plants that provide enjoyment, especially this time of year. You know, they're blooming, and the greens are green, and everything is so nice outside, even though it's hot. You know, they're still out there doing their thing. The trees, we give a special greetings and Thanksgiving for the maple tree, because it's the first, we think of it as the leader of the tree kingdom, because it's the first tree to come alive after the long winter sleep. And it's the first one, you know, when the sap runs, you know, and provides that metaphor for the sweetness of life, you know. And we gather the maple syrup, and we think about that because it's really a lot of work. You have to stay up all night stirring and emptying buckets, and it just takes forever, you know, to do that. And at the end, we've got this wonderful nectar that we drink, and we learn, you know, the value of hard work and the reward for it. So we give that special greetings and Thanksgiving to the maple tree, and for and ask all the other trees that exist out there, that they continue on as originally instructed, the plants that they continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. And then we go about us and we can see the animals. We can see the small animals. We used to have big animals, but they, with the invasion of North America, they were all pushed, you know, back into the wilderness. what's left of it. And we always think of the North America was a lot like the Amazon. This was all just a lot of forests and just covered, and was lush and had all of these creatures and the big animals and the small animals, and we like to acknowledge them. And we acknowledge especially those animals that we've domesticated. We like to dominate things, so we domesticate animals, and the cats and the dogs, and they become our family members, and they take care of our emotional needs for us. So we always like to acknowledge them. So extended greetings and thanksgiving for all of the animals, and ask that they continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. And then we go a little bit farther out, and we look farther up into the sky, and we extend the greetings and thanksgiving for our grandmother, the moon, because the grandmother moon is very special to us, because she controls the cycles of the women and determines the births. And we always like to acknowledge our grandmother, the moon, and ask that she continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. We go a little bit farther, and we see the sun, our eldest brother, the sun. And we acknowledge the sun because it's the sun that provides the daytime light and the energy that we need in order to survive. And we always acknowledge that eldest brother, the sun, and ask that he continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. And then we go farther, and we see the stars, all those beautiful stars that are in the sky tonight, that clear sky. I think we have a nice clear sky tonight. I don't think we're going to have any rain, maybe. And we extend the greetings and thanksgiving to all the star nations, and ask that they continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. Now, there's many, many things that I've kind of skipped over, within the creation, the winds, and all these other things that exist that have a spirit, have a life, and that contribute to our existence and take care of us on a daily basis. But just to kind of not to take too much more time, this can take up to hours, depending on who the speaker is, and how many people are there, they're acknowledging, can go on and on and on.
Right.
So I'm going to just kind of jump to this acknowledgement of the four beings. Now, for us, we're told that the four beings are given a special duty by the Great Mystery to watch over and to guide us and to help us and to always be there for us, to do things for us, to help us continue on. So at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the four beings and ask that they continue on as they were originally instructed, so that life will continue within this creation. And then there's a special ancestor that we always acknowledge is Handsome Lake, who brought to us our last, the fourth teaching of individual behavior, how we are to be within this creation. We got three other messages before that because we, quite frankly, humans have a hard time doing the right thing. So we were given these 4 different times, these original instructions. And the last time, the fourth time was Handsome Lake. And so we'd like to acknowledge Handsome Lake and ask that we continue on with his good message, message of the good mind, and ask that everything continue on as originally instructed within this creation. Now, there's a lot of things that I have left out here, and there's so many things that I've forgotten, and there's many, many more things that I haven't learned, and there's even more things that I'm never going to learn, because as we're told in our way, we get to, once we step off from here and we transition to the other world, that's when everything will be revealed to us. And that's a big relief in a lot of ways, because then we don't have to think we got to know everything. Okay, this is what we know now, and that's okay. That's the way it's supposed to be. Well, once it's our time and we're told that we only have the difference in the time here, and the difference in the number of days between each of us, I guess, to say like originally it was told it was the man and the woman, that they would have just a certain number of days here, and it would be measured by the time that we have with each other, as with other people. And that all, that time will come when we all will leave. So we give a greetings and thanksgiving for all of those things that we haven't included here and that I've forgotten, and ask that we extend the greetings and thanksgiving, acknowledgement for everything in this creation, and extend the greetings and thanksgiving, and ask that everything continue on as originally instructed, so that life will continue with creation. And then finally, the last part, after the disclosure, we always extend the greetings and thanksgiving to the great mystery. And I like that term, the great mystery, because we really, and we're told that, we're not going to really know about that part until we pass on to the other world. So we extend and we call that the great mystery, and we know that the great mystery exists because we see it's everything continuing on and everything working, despite us. We don't really have anything to do with any of that. But it does happen, and it continues. So we extend this greetings and thanksgiving to the great mystery for making it all possible. And then at the end, we give it a Gnonyoh, which means we're done. And that's the Gnonyoh that we try to do whenever the people gather, the words before all else. And we also do it when we end our gatherings as well. So when we start out with our children, I think when we get done today, we have a soundbite. We had sound bites, and the sound bite was the one word, Yahweh, and it's not Yahweh from me to you as people, but it's Yahweh from all of us to the great mystery for making it all possible. So, and we'll use that at the end, so we don't have to do a whole closing.
Okay. So are you gonna? So do you say Yahweh now, and I say no also now, or only then?
Well, when we get done, when you're done.
Only when we're
that's
done.
When everybody knows you're done.
Okay. Okay.
But especially when we eat, because then that gives the cue to clean up.
Oh, sure. That's a good one. Sure. Oh, usually.
Oh, we know we're done eating.
Right.
So, yeah. So the soundbite is Yahweh. And, we always like to tell people these things because, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. So since everybody's in Western New York and we're the original peoples here, my goal in life is to have everybody use the Yahweh, because we've been doing this for thousands of years, and we're going to be doing it for thousands of years to come. So,
well, allow me to say at this point also, Yahweh.
It's not from me to you.
No. But I'd like to say it anyway because I just feel very thankful right now.
Yeah, it's one of those sacred things, It's like, so we try to reserve it for.
Okay. Well, then we'll save it. We'll save it and reserve it.
Not just arbitrarily, but
Okay, so then we'll save that and reserve that for the end. But I did want to also, now I want to say that I know that you are so knowledgeable, Agnes, and what a great organizer you are, and so many things that I would say are very excellent about you, but I don't know all of them. And so we have this great bio that I would like to read, if you don't mind. So, Agnes F. Williams is a Wolf Clan enrolled Seneca, Haudenosaunee, Iroquois, who was born and grew up downstream from the West Valley, New York nuclear waste site on the Cattaraugus Creek of the Seneca Nation of Indians near Irving, New York. She is sister, auntie, grandmother of 8, and mother of 3 daughters. She lives on the Cattaraugus Creek, working in Buffalo, New York, with the Indigenous Women's Initiatives, Indigenous Women's Network / Indigenous Women's Network of Austin, Texas, as well. She has attended Thomas Indian School, Gowanda Central Class of '68, and received her 1972 bachelor's and 1973 master's from Syracuse University School of Social Work. Yay, social workers.
Yay!
Yay for social workers, yes. Agnes became a 1991 doctoral candidate at the American Studies University at Buffalo. Her dissertation topic is the retraditionalization of Indigenous women as an empowerment strategy. Wonderful. And authored a 1978 paper for the National Education Institute, Washington, D.C., The Changing Roles of American Indian Women from the Reservation to an Urban Setting. Now I'm all set we need to ask you for another radio show soon, a radio video show soon when we get into all this, because we won't have time for all this for sure. We already have some topics, and they didn't include that, but I want to hear about that one. Anyway, as a community activist, she helped organize the 1978 longest walk, San Francisco to D.C., the Oakland, California, bless you, Oakland, California AIM, American Indian Movement, for Freedom Survival School, and worked as a diplomat for the NGO, non-governmental organization, International Indian Treaty Council of the United Nations, Geneva, Switzerland, and participated in the 1983 A and H bomb conventions in Japan. Agnes is the founder of the Women of All Red Nations, WARN, Rapid City, South Dakota, and Indigenous Women's Network, Austin, Texas, and the Indigenous Women's Initiatives, a project of Riverside, Salem, UCC, DC, Grand Island, New York. Also parent of the Western New York Peace Center, if I can mention that, and of the Interfaith Peace Network. Is actually not just the parent, is actually the umbrella for the Interfaith Peace Network. As a licensed social worker, Agnes has clinically worked as a perinatal counselor, family therapist, field supervisor for social work students, and a child welfare consultant and training specialist. Currently, Agnes is the coordinator at the Indigenous Women's Initiative campaigning for Water is Life, Nuclear-Free Future, and Dismantling the Doctrine of Discovery. She organized the last 10 years annual celebration commemoration on August 9th, Indigenous Peoples Nuclear-Free Future Day, at the Buffalo History Museum to educate the public about the continued existence of Haudenosaunee peoples and the 2007 United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People, UN-DRIP. Indigenous peoples' right to exist with prior, free, and informed consent. Agnes is appointed to the Climate Change Task Force for the Seneca Nation of Indians near Irving, New York. As an organizer and activist, she extends public invitations to join her work for peace and justice. On August 24, she will host a session of the West Valley Nuclear Education Series entitled Indigenous Peoples for a Nuclear-Free Future. So that is coming right up. So we have to make sure that is widely publicized, and certainly anybody who's listening will really benefit from hearing and learning about it. On August 24, it'll be, is it in the evening? A live stream.
It's a live stream. I think it's like 6 o'clock. It starts at 6, and it's an hour and a half. Good. And so there is a description of that show. And some of it will be things that will have started on here. So this is another, way people can learn more than they have,
than they do here about what's coming up. So we talked about really our basic things that we wanted to talk about. Well, one, we've just had August 9th again, which is, and in fact, often we have helped with that, in a very tangential way, helped with that event, which has been a wonderful event. And sometimes we've had other events associated with it, press conferences or a day-long thing. Last year it was remote. This year, this is part of what we're, this whole series that you're doing on West Valley is part of it. And today I think we're doing a part of it is just to learn about Indigenous peoples, and we can talk about that at the Indigenous Peoples Day, as well as about the effects of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and about what's going on with West Valley. That's sort of an overview of what we wanted to talk about, and especially part of it is for people's learning, and the other part of it is for people helping, because we are all affected, and that's something else that will come out very clearly.
Yeah, for many years, with public education work, everybody kind of was in their own silo. And I lived in California and Oakland for 10 years from 1975 to 1985. And there was all, the Bay Area the San Francisco Bay Area is a hotbed of politics. And the work that we did there, we had a group, settlement type house services. We used to feed 30 people a day, just by chipping in our money and our food stamps. And a lot of teenagers, that were couch surfing and would end up there. And so we were taking care of children and, just really anything everybody needed. But during the day, we'd go all out to these different progressive movements. And these movements, the Chicano people were concerned about the militarization because so many Chicanos were being conscripted, drafted into the military, as same as the natives, and we were always the ones that were put running point and getting killed first, Vietnam, and all of this was still going on in the 70s. So, there was the anti-military movement. One of our leaders there, Bill Wapipa, he was working in the ecumenical. He worked with the churches. The American Indian movement had a strong following and support from the World Council of Churches and all of their affiliates, clergy and laity concerned at that time. And they would have regular meetings, and they would always invite the Indians. They said, and really, they were the ones that kind of put us out there in front in terms of this progressive movement stuff. And I ended up working there's a women's building in San Francisco, and I was on the board for the women's building. So I ended up working with the women's movement. So every morning after we did our Gnonyoh and we offered our prayers and did our ceremony, we would, eat our breakfast, feed everybody, then we'd all go off in different places in the Bay Area to these different movements. And the goal was always the same, and it's still the same, the public education to get progressive movements to put Native land struggle on their political agenda. Because every movement, Indigenous people have really been running point in all of these movements. And if these movements wanted to support us at that time, then all of this rest of what we're calling now, we hear the scholars call it intersectionality. I know you call it, uniting the struggles. And other people are starting to see how the environmental movement is really crisscrossing with Indian land struggles. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you were saying, Native people in America, we were on 70% of the natural resources in the country were on Indian land. And so we were direct assault in terms of our lands and our homelands.
Right.
it can't be more poignantly the case example of the nuclear chain, and people like to call it a nuclear cycle. It's not a cycle, it's a chain. It has a definite beginning and has a definite end. The beginning is uranium mining, and uranium mining was going on in the Southwest. It was going on in the plains. We had people relocated out of boarding schools directly into the urban area at the time in the 70s. 70% of the population was under 25 years old. And it was all intertribal because people, of course, you know, when you're in high school, you hook up and you meet up and then you move to the city to get a job. And the government was actually doing that purposely as part of Eisenhower had the big assimilation plan, you know, assimilate us into the workforce, into the working class to do the work, you know, because they're not going to do the work. They have to have somebody to do the work, you know. So let's get the Indians. So boarding schools were all across the country. They tracked all of us removed us at 5 years old. We didn't see our families till after 18, if we ever saw them again. And tracked us into farming for the men and domestic work for the women. And my grandparents, I have a great uncle and great aunt on both sides of my family that went to Carlisle. It was one of the first boarding schools in Carlisle.
Right.
And I think everybody has heard about the unmarked graves and the skeleton remains of children that they're finding now at these, in Canada it started, and they're starting to search the same areas here in the United States, the boarding schools, and the numbers just keep mounting. You know, every day I look at the Facebook, come up with, you know, more and more skeletal remains. So this repatriation movement, you know, the 70s, what everybody says about Nixon, I guess I got to kind of give him some credit because it was the Nixon era that most of the Indian legislation was passed. The Indian religious freedom was passed. You know, many of the laws that the U.S. had for themselves. Now, these aren't our laws. These are their laws for themselves, for you guys to follow. Right. You know, was repatriation, the Indian Religious Freedom Act, you know, the whole recognition of the disastrous effects of the boarding school and the urban relocation programs that had happened through the 50s, 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And, you know, it's interesting to me because in 1900, our population of Native people started to finally level off. We were going extinct before 1900. And it started to level off. And then there was this whole policies, all these governmental policies that were really driving an attack of threatening and killing us off, you know, the genocide policies. So by 1977, you know, people found that had gone and removed to the urban areas, like in the Bay Area, we had like 60,000 natives that living there, San Francisco, San Jose, and Oakland. And in the Northwest, there was a lot of problems with the fishermen and the hunters. And they were all upset that the Indians were still fishing and still hunting for food. Because basically, you know, we never really did assimilate into the economy. So we were still subsisting off the land. And this is the thing about Indigenous people. You know, we live closest to the land.
Right.
So we really represent everything that happens to the land happens to us first. And we feel that first.
Right.
So the sportsmen and the fishermen went to Congress and said, well, we don't like all these Indians taking all of the fish and doing all the hunting in the Northwest. So they came up with 11 pieces of anti-Indian legislation that would terminate our treaty and our trust status that the U.S. government had established and defined as their relationship with us. And once in the Bay Area, I was working there as a child welfare director of an agency. It was the first specialized agency. Before that, they just had 3 Indian centers. They didn't have an agency that was for children, but there were so many foster children as a result of boarding schools that didn't teach Native people how to parent. They weren't parented. They parented themselves or each other. And when they graduated from boarding school, then they didn't know how to parent. So many people lost their children to the foster care system. So the next generation became the foster care system and the adopted system. So the government put money into 12 demonstration projects to meet the need of all of these foster children that were out there. So we had the task of recruiting foster parents. And we started looking in the suburbs, because that's where the more healthy people were and had jobs and, that could absorb all these children. The Mormon Church, the Indian Child Welfare Act was passed in 1978. The Mormon Church got an exemption from it because they had so many Navajo and Southwestern children in that area. So this whole bringing people together in the late 70s and finding out about the anti-Indian legislation is really what gave birth. We would meet monthly, and then we found out about the legislation. We started doing a newsletter. There were 60 different groups of Native people, organizations, and it had just gotten to the point that we were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and we were healthy enough to really do something about it before we were just dying off for a couple hundred years. So we had started to do, it was the American Indian Movement, Dennis Banks declared war again on the U.S. as they were doing regularly. And on New Year's Eve, they decided to walk from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. to defeat this anti-Indian legislation. And so we had about 200 people. We went to Alcatraz Island, had a pipe ceremony, commemorated all the people that had occupied the island in '69, and with the Native Rights Movement, and motorcaded to the steps of Sacramento and had a rally there, and it started.
Wow!
And we got to Nevada by the second day, which was really interesting. And so by Sunday, we were walking out Sunday, and of course, Monday morning, everybody's trying to find a telephone to call in and say, I can't come to work.
For the next how long?
We didn't want to leave. We didn't want to leave.
Right, of course.
And a group would go ahead of us to find us a place because we walked for the first 48 hours without sleeping or stopping or staying anywhere.
Wow.
And so then a group went ahead. And a group was back. Dennis Banks was unable to leave California because he had gained asylum from Governor Brown. He had been on the run from South Dakota and persecution, and he couldn't leave California. And so he was doing all the organizing in California.
Really?
The water was going, and all across the country, from the south and the north, Indian people would come and take care of, feed, ceremony, and send them off the next day, the walkers, on their way to Washington, D.C. So that started on February 4th in 1978, and they arrived in June. And when they arrived in Washington, D.C., they had 30,000 people that were walking with them. And it was at that walk that the Japanese Buddhists, the Fuji Guruji, over 100 years old, and he walked with us while they carried him because he had to be in this thing, and they all had to carry them in his chair. And that's when we first hooked up with the Japanese. So that little logo on the Peace Center, that you have the origami.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Bird. Yeah. We were introduced to the Japanese that way. And they stayed right with us the whole time. Mm-hmm. And Jun-san, Junior Suda, came back to California and stayed with us at the group. And after the war, yeah. Mm-hmm. But we were successful in defeating the 11 pieces of anti-Indian legislation. And everybody in the American Indian movement has been doing walks ever since 1978, that walk to Washington.
Right. And others too. So it's really, so we've been, there have been lots of walks that I've been on that are all, so I think we can all thank, that's yet another thing that we can be thankful for. I also can't help mentioning that amongst the many things I'm very thankful for, especially that I thank you for, Agnes, is for those of us in Western New York, our number of times that we have gotten to meet and hear from, meet and be with Dennis Banks, who came to Western New York a number of times just in these last few years before he passed.
Yeah. Well, he's at Onondaga Asylum as well. So he and his family stayed there, and he made a lot of alliances and relationships. And one of the reasons I wanted you to read that opening thing on my bio is because it's really about relationships. What we do with the Gnonyoh, it's all about the relationship, and all of our languages, our indigenous languages, it's about our relationship with where we live, our environment. One of the elders in that I worked with once asked me if I knew what the word for robin was, for the bird robin. He said, "What's the Seneca word?" And I said, I don't know. And he said, "Well, it's joy-ike." And he said, "Do you know why it's joy-ike?" And I said, "No." I said, "No." And he said, "Well, that's because that's what the sound they make."
Oh,
So all the indigenous languages are around the world are really about our environment and sounds and the relationships that we have with every living spiritual thing that is in this creation. So our languages are so important. And it's no wonder that, the United States government, put us in boarding schools and beat us if we spoke our languages, because they were trying to beat the Indian out of us. But, a lot of people escaped it, but a lot of them didn't. And a lot of our children were sacrificed in the boarding schools and died, because of that. I think that's one of the things people are beginning to realize now, just how pervasive the killing, even though it wasn't outright Indian wars anymore, it was still going on in the boarding schools, and the abuse and the sexual abuse that goes on in these religious organizations that were removing Indian children from their traditional homes.
So heartbreaking, just terrible, just in so many ways, really even more cruel and horrible, just a terrible, terrible, heart-wrenching thing.
So even now, some of the schools are open, and like in Canada, there's a highway in British Columbia that's really known for the missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Right.
Because in order to go to the doctor, even to see a GYN, they have to hitchhike to, the nearest city in order to receive health care services. So here's these young girls out on the road, and you got all these truckers coming along, and, and whoever preying on them. And we have so many missing and disappear. It's just become such a normal thing to happen. for the last 300 years. Columbus, when he first hit the shores, that's one of the first things he started doing was killing and raping women.
Right.
And he engaged in the slave trade and took young girls back to Europe. But nobody talks about that part of it. Everybody's still in denial about how great he was. So, a lot of this history, like they say, we're trying to rewrite history, but it's more about, letting the truth come out.
Absolutely.
Let the healing begin.
Absolutely.
Because the intergenerational trauma that has existed for Indigenous people for all of these years, they just keep getting re-traumatized with each generation. There's some new onslaught of disease or war or abuse that goes on. And the worst abuse, I guess, we suffer from today is invisibility. Everybody believes that we don't even exist. So, we've been in a fight for our lives for a very long time, and it's going to be that way for a while. And just gaining acknowledgement, just like that Gnonyoh, that was our basic way of being. We acknowledge life, we acknowledge everybody. And not being acknowledged is really the psychological death blow, that still goes on today.
Well, and that is where hopefully that is changing. So, the Indigenous Peoples Day is just like that much of a start. It's like barely even a start. It's like, you can't even open the fingers off of each other for the start. But it's a start. But the other thing, I go ahead.
In 1977, the year before we did the longest walk, in 1975, there was a shootout with Leonard Peltier.
Right,
being charged, has been in jail for over 45 years for shooting killings he did not do. But the FBI's, and in South Dakota, there was a civil war going on after Wounded Knee of 1973, the second Wounded Knee. And there were 500 unsolved murders between 1973 and 1975. And then that shootout happened. And then Leonard got railroaded into jail. He's been in jail ever since. And in 1970, and when that was all going on, it was Chief Foolscrow who told the Lakotas, he said, we can no longer try to appeal to these people because they are, you can't talk to them. They just want to kill us. And he decided, at that point, he said, we have to go to the United Nations. We have to go international because, the Great Mystery put us here in North America to be the caretakers of this creation here. And we have a right to exist. And so in 1977, the American Indian Movement and the International Indian Treaty went to Geneva only to be denied access. And they told them, they said, well, the United Nations is a nation-state organization, and Indigenous people are just populations, and you don't have a seat in this, in 1977. So we couldn't go in.
Right.
So we spent the next, 20, 30 years trying to get acknowledged and trying to get to the table. And one of the first things, because so many Indigenous people from all over the world would come and file human rights complaints, primarily, again, through the ecumenicals, through all of the religious people. They come and through their sponsorship, through the NGO, they go and they be here and file their complaint about the human human rights abuses, about the killing and about the murders and the taking of the land and the killing of the animals and birds and the environment and just on and on and on. And finally, the UN decided to 1964, was it 64? 64, crazy, 84. When they declared the Indigenous World Indigenous Peoples Day, Indigenous people without the S.
Right.
Which was an insult to every Indigenous person that ever went to the UN because we were so diverse.
Right.
We lumped us together in this one generic people. So the next years the struggle became to get recognized as the diversity of Indigenous people that there are, and to put an S on peoples. So when this World August 9th was declared, it was declared Indigenous People Day. And of course, there was immediate reaction to that and a protest of that. And then we spent the next 20, 30 years trying to change that, which finally in 2007,
right,
and the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples was passed.
mm-hmm.
We were recognized as humans, and we were recognized to have human rights. So that's how long it took.
It's a long, long road, and yet I want to say, first of all, we have so much to learn from Indigenous peoples and from the different life ways, and we have only to benefit. So here's, when we talk about all of these things, first of all, Indigenous Peoples Day, I'm going to say, was also on the anniversary of the bombing of Nagasaki. And so Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which are two examples of just the most barbaric, horrible kind of an action that anyone could take. And that beautiful unity and working together of the Japanese and the American Indian indigenous peoples, and it's just to the benefit of all of us who are living in this world with all of this terrible nuclear waste, danger, all kinds of resources going into just having as Claire Grady just put it, one of the Kings Bay Plowshares who so admires you and sends her love. She says, it's a gun to the head of the world, all day long, every day. That is going on, and so it's the indigenous peoples and the Japanese peoples who have especially, and other people who are working to stop that. And also, we have it right here with West Valley. So we have all that waste that is going right through, the running in Cattaraugus Creek, the plume and all the unstable land where the runoff now, while they're doing the demolition. And I just think of the indigenous peoples and as you're always saying in the UN DRIP, Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the prior free and informed consent, and then coming for the peoples, for the indigenous peoples, for the whole creation and all the rights of creation to exist without people and corporations just wrecking the whole thing with all kinds of waste and toxicity coming from our bad acts.
One of the reporters that came about West Valley to me, he was asking questions about it, and I told him, I said, in Europe, they never learned the lesson
mm-hmm.
About, not defecating where you live. Because
right.
In Europe, they used to throw their human waste in the street.
Right. Right.
And then we had the Dark Ages, and they had the bubonic plague and all these
Right.
god-awful diseases.
Right.
They didn't learn the lesson. They didn't learn the lesson that you can't destroy where you live.
Now you're making me think of the, we used to have barn swallows on the porch, and watch these barn swallows. It was better than TV. We didn't have TV. Watching these barn swallows, and let me tell you, they put their little behinds out of the nests and pooped out because they will not poop where they live. Right? Like you're saying, it is natural wisdom that people should have, that the barn swallows have that, but apparently European people did not have it.
So, it's just that whole thinking about destroying where you live, and thinking that in the short term, I can make some money, or I want this now, so I'm not going to worry about pouring nuclear waste into Lake Ontario. In Oswego, there's 3 decaying nuclear plants that were put there in mid-century, 20th century. Mid-20th century, they built the Kinzig Dam and flooded and took by lands the Allegheny, which was a very strong cultural stronghold of the Senecas.
Right.
And these things were not coincidences. At the same time, the Robert Moses Power Project took the land of the Tuscarora. Mm-hmm. During the same time, that whole mid-century, that 10, 20 years, they did all of these things. So you've got that going on. Mm-hmm. And all these different territories, Haudenosaunee territories across New York State. And did anybody, say, you can't do that to the Indigenous people, because, as Indigenous people or Native people or Seneca people, we can't go back to Europe.
Right.
We have no place else to go. This is where the Great Mystery put us. And this is our land. This is where we were put. So we don't have any place to go. Everybody else has got a homeland someplace else they can go. So they just feel like they could come and ruin everything over here and then go back to. Or it's that frontier mentality.
Right.
Is that, it's gimme, and I'm just going to take and take and take, and it's not going to. Well, we're getting to the end of that,
Well, speaking of getting to the end, we're really at time to stop. So I think we need our sound bite. But I would just say, to be continued. People should tune in. It'll be posted. Your next thing is on the 24th. That's all about West Valley. That will get into depth on West Valley. And there's so much to learn from you, so much to learn from our Indigenous brothers and sisters. So
it was really Junsan, that coined that phrase, nuclear free future.
Oh, I love that phrase. But so anyway, I just want you to say, for the closing.
Yahweh.
Gnonyoh.
Okay. And let's go BI. Till we meet again.
Yes. Thank you so much, Agnes. And we've been talking peace and truth and love. Thank you. Wow. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so very much. Boy, I learned a lot. And, I really, there's just so much to go into. So many directions we could go with that. That was a very wonderful. There was so much in that about the history, about what needs to be done, and, what we are trying to do and what we need to do. So,
well, there's a lot of soul searching. We all got to do a lot of soul searching, because there's some big changes that got to be made, and we're the ones messing it all up,
Right. No, so we've got to do what we can do and figure out how to make it happen. because
Right.
it's got to happen because we are running out of time. I know you know that. So
Right.
we're making it, we'll just do what we can do for the seventh generation. And I just thank you more than I can say, Agnes. So, thanks. Take care. Bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll be in touch. Thanks a
Okay.
jillion.